Hi, everyone. This is Scott Cantrell with another exciting episode of Consulting with Authority. I am especially excited to be joined by a friend and colleague who I met a few months ago through, I think, a mutual business coach of ours. And so excited that she agreed to be on the podcast today. And I know that all of the information and expertise she's going to share will be highly, highly useful for all of you who are, leading your business and trying to lead yourself, trying to lead your team to accomplish more of the goals that you want to achieve. So I want to welcome onto the podcast, Jalene Case. Jalene works with leaders who want to lead themselves first and build stronger teams that are focused on what matters most. Jalene, thank you so much for carving out the time and being here with us today.
Thank you for inviting me, Scott. I'm excited to talk with you.
It's going to be a fun conversation. You and I have done some work together, and we've had a lot of great conversations. And every time I talk to you, I've always got pen in hand and my notebook here, ready to take notes. And I think every time we've spoken, I've taken something away that I can, that is useful for my clients, but also useful in my own work and in my own life. And I know that today will be no different. So for all of our listeners and viewers out there, make sure you've got your note-taking apparatus ready to go. Or if you're listening in the car, maybe don't take notes, but just file some key things away in your mind. Jalene, I want to begin our conversation here just by having you tell a little bit about your background and how you got into this world of consulting.
Yeah. So Scott, I'm going to start way back in Boise, Idaho, where I grew up, but I'll make it a short path from growing up in Boise, Idaho to where I am now. So I grew up a mechanic's daughter, and my dad, even though we didn't have a lot of money, he always figured out a way to do what matters most. And what mattered most to him was riding motorcycles. So he got a family of 5 riding motorcycles. Lord knows how he did that and kept us all together and safe. But we did that. And then as a teenager, kind of in my growing years, I rode those dirt bikes, like a bat out of hell in the mountains of Idaho. But I also got straight A's, and I played every sport a girl could play. And that was back in the late 70s. And then, my work career took off, but not really with a bang. So when I was in high school, I started a program that was designed for people not destined for college. It was really an office education program back then. We called people who worked in offices secretaries. And so half the day, I would go to school half the day as a senior in high school. And then the other half of the day, I would work as a teller at a bank. And I did that for a couple of years after high school. And I tried to advance at the bank. And I remember accidentally looking down on my application that the manager had written some notes on. And I saw this note that said, "She's a dime a dozen." And it still hurts to say that.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that was really a turning point for me. Although quite honestly, even though I knew I didn't want to go that route, I didn't know what I wanted yet. So kind of fast forward in life, and I was just listening to something on the radio. By this point in time, I had gotten married at 25, had a kiddo, and was still working full time. Really worked full time since 17 years old. And I heard this question on the radio, and it just said, "What would you do if you won $1 million?" And I knew instantly I would go back to school. I always wanted to go to school. And so during the course of my late 30s and mid 40s, I got a bachelor's in management and organizational leadership and a master's in education with a focus in organization and human resource education, which who knew then how much it would tie into what I'm doing now, right?
Sure.
And then I worked for 22 years in the food service brokerage industry and left that industry to move into to get married for a second time and live on the Oregon coast and start a nonprofit job.
Okay.
A job for a nonprofit organization, and left that job in 2015 as the executive director because my husband and I decided to quit our good jobs and hop on 2 big BMW motorcycles and ride them to the southern tip of South America.
That's amazing.
And we've never been the same.
I love it.
Yeah.
So you've kind of set that up there. Now we got to dive a little bit into this trip. So if you don't mind me asking, what was the catalyst for the trip? I mean, because that's something that's the type of decision that other people, and I'm sure you've heard this in different words, but that's the type of decision or type of experience that people look at you and they say things like, oh, I envy you, or I wish I could make that kind of decision, or how lucky you are. And of course, the reality that I've started to figure out in my few years on this planet is that, first of all, how fortunate and blessed are we to be able to have the type of careers that where we can even fathom making that decision, number one. But once you get past that, the reality is that those are the types of life decisions that we often can make. We just choose not to because we're too timid or scared, or it's so not the norm that we are pulled away from it due to the inertia of the status quo. So I'm fascinated by the trip, and I want to hear, I'm sure you could do a whole day or a whole week about the experience that you had, or a whole month on the experience that you had. I do want to hit on some highlights, but what was that trigger point that said we're going to do this?
Yeah, I can tell you exactly. So I'm going to give you two trigger points, because there was the starting and then there was the let's go, but it took a few years in between.
Okay.
So the first trigger point was in 2009. So remember, we didn't leave till 2015.
Yeah.
My dad died. He was 66 years old. His big BMW motorcycle was loaded for another trip to Alaska.
Wow.
And I won't go into the details. It doesn't really matter, but basically it went from, I have a sore shoulder. 1 week later, he was dead because of flesh-eating bacteria, which is just bizarre.
Goodness.
And so as we were going through his things, my mom was saying, what do you kids want to take home? And we ended up taking home, because by that point I was riding motorcycles with this lovely new husband of mine. Yeah. And I'm still married to him, by the way. And, so we took home some motorcycle DVDs, and we got home, and like a few months later, we started watching them. And some of the DVDs were about how to ride your motorcycle around the world.
Wow.
And I asked my mom, I said, wow, I didn't know you guys were thinking about this. And she said, what are you talking about? She had no idea. No. So I knew that my dad had that dream. And then we just started watching them, Friday night, Saturday night, looking for something to watch. And slowly over time, that seed just grew in us. And then we realized, oh my gosh, what would it look like for us to do this? We started to envision what it would look like. I would start to see, I live on the Oregon coast, so I would see these big adventure travel motorcycles loaded down and dirty and, cool stickers all over their bags. And I would begin to think I want to be that traveler. And so then we started having serious discussions. So now you fast forward, when did we make the decision? One Sunday night before we were getting ready, getting all ready for work the next day, and we're in the kitchen cleaning up. And I said, because we'd had lots of discussions, I turned to him and I said, did we just decide to quit our jobs? He's like, yeah, I think we did. And we did it. Gave us 5-month notice at work. And that's the shortest version I can tell you.
It's frankly an inspiring story, and something that I think we would all do well to number one, plant the seed in the first place, allow the seed to take root for these grandiose dreams that it doesn't, whether they're normal or not, right? If they're your dream, letting that seed seeing that it's there, letting it take root, and not being afraid to cultivate it and let it grow. And you guys actively did that, right? You actively, every Friday night, we watch the video. You actively, whether you knew you were going to do it in the future or not, at that point, it's not irrelevant, but that wasn't the point. The point was you're actively cultivating the dream until finally it became ripe fruit on the vine that was ready for you to pick, to continue the metaphor. So I think that's just phenomenal. I'm interested in this because I think that type of choice, certainly in this sense, it was about travel. It was about an incredibly unique experience. It was about fulfilling a dream that you and your husband had. It carried on from your father, no doubt. And I think that's incredibly meaningful. And everybody's got something like that. It may not be motorcycling down to South America or walking the Camino Real, as one of our good friends and business coaches has done multiple times, but there's something, and it may not have to do anything with travel. It may be starting a new business. It may be someone listening to this who has a perfectly good corporate gig. They know they're dabbling in consulting. They know they could do this on their own, but they're a little timid and scared. Maybe that's their big decision that they have to make. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about where was your what was your feeling and your state of mind as you guys were getting closer to that decision point, and maybe that morning, that decision point, and during those 5 months of notice, I'm assuming, I don't think I've ever made a decision like this. This is why I'm fascinated, right? Anything I can learn about this type of decision, anything the listeners and viewers can learn about what it takes and what you're going to face when you make that type of decision, I think is valuable to learn from. Obviously, no doubt there was joy and excitement and anticipation, but I can only assume that there was trepidation and anxiousness and even doubt and fear about all of this wrapped into that too. Tell me a little bit about that experience during that time, and how what did you do with those types of feelings? How did you manage that? Because I think that's the thing that, keeps us from living our best lives, is we listen to one voice more than we listen to another. And that was what makes the difference. What was your experience like?
Gosh, I could go in so many different directions with that question, but I'll try to keep it concise and say fear. Absolutely. Fear was there. We were in our 50s. Yeah. This is not the thing you do in your 50s. Quit your good jobs. I mean, we both had great jobs, and we liked our jobs. It wasn't that we didn't dislike our jobs.
Yeah.
So number one, fear, and the voice of our society.
Yeah.
You shouldn't do that. You should be loading up your retirement funds. You should wait until retirement to do something like this. It took a lot. And now, because of the work I do and the additional education I've completed since we've been back, I can unpack that a lot better than I could at the time.
Yeah.
But here's the thing and I think I know we all have that internal voice. And to me, there's two. Actually, a kind of a Native American story, I believe it is. Like, we all have these two, I think it's wolves inside us. One is, that mean, ferocious, it says mean things side. And one is that side that, believes in possibilities. And the question is, which one do you feed?
Yeah. Right.
And so I think as we were deciding, we gave voice, of course, to the fears, and we tried to be realistic about it. But then there was that little voice. This is the point I want to get to, because I think it's true in business too. That whisper that doesn't go away.
Oh, yeah. Right.
The whisper that says that, and for me, this is the whisper. And the whisper was, I want to do this before I die. I want to do a long-term trip. It didn't have to be on motorcycles for me. That wasn't my passion. I liked it. I was comfortable with it. Right. Could have been a sailboat, frankly. Right. So it's following that voice above the fear voice.
I love the Native American wolf story. And I think now that you bring it back up, I think I have heard that before. And which one lives, which one dies, which one grows, which one declines. It's the one that you feed. Which one are you going to listen to? And so what I'm hearing you say is, even in the midst of making that decision, probably even in the midst of the journey at times, perhaps less so because there's so much excitement about being there. But even, I would assume, in the midst of the journey, and I'm kind of correlating this to making a business decision or any other major decision that we make that maybe goes against the grain or goes against the inertia of society. Even in the midst of making that decision and having that experience, that whisper is not going to go away. Those voices, both voices are always there. And it's an ongoing, I won't say struggle, it's an ongoing choice of which one we choose to indulge, which one we decide to listen to. And the one we listen to is the one that will follow. So if you want to tap into fear and not do the thing, then listen to the one wolf. If you want to be bold and arguably brave and go against the grain and take that chance and have that experience, then listen to the other.
Scott, I want to just connect this directly to business.
Okay.
Because here's the thing that drove me on this trip. Yes, I wanted to do a long-term trip, but once we made the decision of where we wanted to go, because we really could have gone anywhere in the world, right? Right. But we knew we wanted to give ourselves 2 years. So begin thinking SMART goals here, right? And when I actually give presentations now on self-leadership, I use stories and pictures from this journey because it's directly related to leading ourselves in life and business. So we had this SMART goal. We're going to go to the southern tip of South America. by the way. That city is Ushuaia, Argentina, just a few hundred miles from Antarctica. And we're going to go there and back in 2 years. And so as we were going, you're right, this was absolutely the hard. People think, oh, it was fun. You had so much freedom. You didn't have to work. It was the hardest challenge of my life. I almost came back 3 times because now I understand more about why that was. I mean, I really love talking with people, and I speak enough Spanish to get by, but not enough to have those rich, deep conversations. Yeah. And I was talking about seeds and metaphors, and I was like that wilting vine sometimes because I didn't have that, because that motivates me, that drives me.
Right.
So the point is, we had a goal. I was going to make it to that southern tip of South America. Like I was going to do that. That was it. So, and it gave me the guts to start this business, which I had wanted to start since I finished my master's degree several years before, but I hadn't been able to let go. I'd worked full time, 35 years at that point, 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. That's a tough thing to let go of. It's a habit. It's a routine. It's a regular paycheck. There's a lot involved with that. So, but at the time I had no idea that this trip. So I think that's, again, listening to that internal voice and knowing when to follow it. Because we don't follow everything it says, but when you follow it, it will connect in the future in ways that you can't know yet.
That's great.
That's great. Same business and planting those seeds all along the way.
Yeah. What I wrote down about this last point that you made is one bold decision can open the door for the next.
Yes.
And so that, I think that's what you're talking about in terms of this incredibly brave, truly bold and brave type of decision that you made. And again, you said that's what gave me the guts to start this business, which is why we're talking today.
Yeah.
And so that's why I even know this story. It's why I'm able to ask you these questions, is because of that one decision that you made that opened the door to this career. So before we leave this trip, and you can, I'll defer completely to you. And these don't have to be. They don't have to be life or business lessons, although there probably are life and business lessons pretty much in every experience we have. But tell us a little, maybe 1, 2, or 3 highlights about the experience, this 2-year journey, because this is something, I don't know that that's ever a decision that I would, I won't say be able to make. I don't know that's a decision I would ever make, but a long-term, I don't know if it'd be 2 years, but a long-term journey, to somewhere, spending a month in a particular country, or 3 months or 6 months around the world, or even a year being gone. I can imagine that. 2 years, I think, is maybe on the outskirts of my imagination right now. Maybe it won't be tomorrow. Maybe it won't be after this conversation. But maybe hit on a couple of highlights of that experience, because there's no doubt there's an incredible, you probably lived a lifetime of experience or more in those 2 years.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Although the way I describe it to people is, normally you live life, if you think of it on a spectrum, normally we're kind of in the middle. On this trip, we were on both ends. So either it was like super magical or super challenging.
Yeah.
So here's what came to mind when you asked that. So a couple stories to give you a sense of the journey. First of all, for me, it was almost always about the people. So what I love the most, and I'll tell you a specific situation, what I love the most is when we would stay in hostels. So they're not as popular in the US, but hostels are where you have a room, and it might be a private room, might be with a bunch of bunk beds with other people. And then you all share a living room, and you share the bathrooms, and you share the kitchen. So when we would be in the kitchen together cooking our meals, maybe we would, so here's a story I think about. In Santiago, Chile, we stayed at a place there for Casa Mate, was the name of it. A big old house, beautifully renovated. Simply we were not independently wealthy, by the way. We were trying to do this as inexpensively as possible, but still clean and comfortable, And so we were staying in this house, and so we would just be with people in the kitchen, cooking our meals. We would decide, let's all pull together and cook a meal together and sit down and eat on the rooftop patio.
Yeah.
We would hang out. I had an amazing conversation with a guy who, amazing conversations were important to me. So a guy who was in his 30s, riding his motorcycle around the world, and we just ended up sitting together, drinking coffee, having a deep conversation. That's also the place where I sat down and interviewed a guy that we met from Iran. And his name is Pejman. And it just was fascinating to sit down and ask him questions about his country, about his travels, about his life. So it's getting to meet people that you would never get it. Well, not never, that's a strong word, but just it's such a great opportunity to sit down and talk with. So those were my favorite times, is times like that. But the other side is people will ask, what's my favorite location? What my favorite spot? Yeah. And interestingly, the one that comes to mind is the place that was harshest. But yeah, it was just the most magnificent and spectacular. And that is down in southern Patagonia. There's a particular national park called Torres del Paines. And wow, you could just Google that, and the mountains and it's just so vast down there. The wind blows. That area is known for really high winds, gravel roads for motorcycle riders. So we would meet people along the way and help each other out. So I'm just going to press pause on myself because one story will roll into the next. Yeah, sure.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
I think it's fantastic. And I think, what you mentioned, I love this idea of the spectrum of life, right? Where we are at any one time. And you're right. Most of the time we're somewhere in the middle. Maybe we're shifting back and forth a little bit. Sometimes we're in the middle. Sometimes we're on the optimistic or more prosperous, easier side. And sometimes not so much, right? We have tragedy and things we have to deal with. And so, I wouldn't have even, having not spoken to you in depth about this, I would not have realized that I can absolutely understand it now, but I would not have thought of this trip as being, often it's one or the other, right? And probably sometimes in close proximity to one another in terms of time, right? Just because the nature of what you're doing and what you're having to do to continue the trip and to move to the next step and to get to the next place. And, and then obviously the, different cultural and language barriers that no doubt you had to understand, learn about and overcome and deal with. I think it's fascinating. And I appreciate you kind of, to use the word, taking us on a detour there and sharing with us a little bit about that experience. I'd love to learn more. So obviously you came back and you had this desire and new dream. And now you said, I did that. I can do anything. So I'm going to start this business. Talk to us a little about how your consulting firm was born, how it got started.
Okay. So it first started with the inkling of an idea, started when I was in southern Patagonia, and I spent some time all by myself for 10 days because Keith went off on a motorcycle ride with a few other guys. An extra 1,500 miles off of our track. And I decided I didn't want to go on that. So I allowed myself to explore. And I want to share this because I feel like it's a part that is often missed as we're trying to decide what kind of our choice for our business is. I allowed myself to explore every rabbit hole I wanted to go down. One of the paths that I would never have gone on is coaching. I had never had a coach before, but I had a particular view of coaching. I didn't know anything about it. But when I would talk to people, they'd say, when I talked to them about the kind of business I wanted to start, they say, oh, so you want to be a coach? And I said, no, I don't want to be a coach. Well, I gave myself a chance to explore that. And I realized, oh, wow, this is this is what I want to do in addition to facilitating and helping teams and businesses, because it would take it deeper. And I was deciding between, do I want to start a business or do I want to go back and be an executive director, which I also loved. It wasn't, but I made the decision to start a business. Okay. So then I also made the decision to get a certification in coaching as we were coming back. Okay. So the date we returned to the US actually was based on the date I started a coaching program with the Coaches Institute. Coactive coaching, it was a year-long program. And I say that because coaching still is kind of a wild, wild west. People
sure it is.
call
Yeah.
themselves a coach. And I believe strongly in, educating and training to be a coach. Okay. So my brother lives in Boise, Idaho, and he had done some work for a business there. And he sent me an email while we were still staying in Santiago, Chile. And he said, hey, I don't know what you're going to do when you get back, but you would be a great fit with this organization. And that organization is called thecompleteleader.org. And in fact, I am a great fit with them, and since have become more involved, which I'll share later. But I reached out to the owner and all excited. I want to start this business, no details. And he said, well, let's talk when you're stateside. So that started me down a path that I hadn't even considered before. So these pieces are coming together. Yes, I knew I wanted to start this business, focused on other businesses, focused on working with teams and leaders. And then the next thing that comes along is this robust coaching certification. And the next thing that comes along is a person who connects me with an assessment tool that has actually become a cornerstone of my business that I wouldn't have done had I not met him. Mm-hmm. And these things start coming together. So now I get back home and I'm actually living in a house again. And I just got started. And, you start slow, you just start reaching out to who you know and start planting seeds.
Yeah.
Just end it with that. It's like, and that was in the summer of 2017 when we moved to our house.
That's fantastic. So now let's dive into some of your work. I'd love to learn a little bit more. You've touched on it a little bit, but tell us a little about the nature of the work that you do and who the clients are that you serve. And, so who do you serve and how do you serve them? What does a normal type of engagement look like? And what are you working with them to help them achieve?
Mm-hmm. Yep. So what my business looks like now is, first I'll say I also live in a small community on the Oregon coast. We have a population of about 10,000. There'll be 50,000 in the whole area. You're going an hour out. Yeah. So what my business looks like now is really working with businesses, organizations, nonprofits, government agencies, working with first, of course, the leader brings me in because something is kind of awry. They're not quite sure. They can't quite put a finger on it, or maybe sometimes they can, and they know there's some specific problems. So they bring me in to work with their team. And most of the time, I start with an assessment tool. And the reason is because it gives people a foundation. So the one I use the most is to help people learn more about their behaviors, how they do what they do, and what motivates them, why they do what they do. And even if a team is having, let's say they're just really having problems, rather than starting out tackling those problems, starting out with helping people get to know each other. So I believe we don't show up at work trying to be jerks, right? We most of us, and I don't think anyone does. So we use that as a starting point, and then working together in team sessions. And that might be in 1 hour increments. It might be full day increments. And I'll be honest, Scott, in the beginning, I was just like, yay, somebody wants to hire me. Let's just do this one day thing. This is great. But now what I've evolved to is being the expert, like partnering with the leader of that organization to lay out their team development for the year. And really strategize about where they want to be taking their team instead of them just having the Band-Aid approach too. Yeah. So that's what I do mostly with teams. I think that defines that. The executive coaching side, sometimes that's with leaders that are inside that team. Sometimes it's leaders that come to me in other ways. And this actually kind of rolls into my favorite marketing tool, which is offering complimentary mini workshops or presentations, call them what you will, so that people can get to know me a little bit. And then they hire me as a coach. And some kind of scenarios of why people hire me. There's a woman who I've worked with for a couple of years that was trying to make a decision. She'd been with an organization for almost 30 years, and she was in line to be the next president. She wasn't sure if she wanted that. So, we worked we work together. And we also use this assessment tool for her to get to know herself from a different perspective, the person she is now. I've also worked with a woman who was stepping up, and I work with men too, but she was stepping up into a leadership role, and she was on the younger side, and she knew she needed to, she wanted to be a better leader. She knew she wanted some help with that. And by the way, she got to know me through a workshop that I offered where there were only 3 people there and only one that I didn't know. And her that I ended up working with. And so it started with executive coaching. Then it led to her being promoted to a national position and then bringing me in to work with her team. And now we have an annual development plan, and it's a global company. And her team is actually held up as being one of the models of all the offices globally at this point.
That's great.
So that's kind of an idea of how I work there. And then groups. So we've talked about businesses, we talked about coaching. The third area that I do of my business, the third pillar, I suppose, is groups. So that looks like here's 2 good examples of that. I collaborated with a colleague from the Complete Leader program, and he and I developed a self-leadership program. And we offer it virtually. He actually lives on the East Coast. And we're now in the 3rd iteration of that. And that's a 9-session program, 2 virtual hours each session. And now that has led to an organization here in town wanting us to come into their organization and specifically do that program for their organization, because they've sent already some leaders through it. They want us to do it as a foundation for all the new leaders that come into their organization.
That's great.
And then one other group that has been, and this also kind of weaves into marketing, because I know we all are always looking for ways to do that better in a meaningful way, right? Is I connected with the Chamber of Commerce, and so I started leading their leadership program, and that the program has been going on for more than 30 years now. The gentleman who started it was 85 when I came to town, and he was ready to hand over the helm, and I was ready to take it. And I've done that now 3 years now. It goes for 10 months, and it's 1 day a month. And the reason I mention that is like, connect with your chambers if that's an area, if you're looking to connect with businesses. And I've done several other things with them, one of which I'm going to be doing later today, actually, an exciting new event.
Awesome. That's great. And those are great. Those are great. You wove in some fantastic business development strategies there too. This idea, which I'm a huge proponent of, and we've talked about in the past ourselves, of doing these mini workshops as a showcase to be in front of your ideal prospects, potential decision makers, to establish your credibility, your authority, to demonstrate your knowledge and your skill, so that they can get a taste of that. And then obviously that tells them what they need to know in terms of can this person do what they say they can do, and they gives them clarity on how they could benefit from the services that you provide. And then the note about chambers of commerce, I think in most cases that's a totally overlooked opportunity for so many independent business to business consultants. And I think part of that is, so much of the work that we can do nationally, we can do virtually now. So we're not limited to our own geography, but the reality is why you still don't have to be limited to your own geography, but you can still go find clients at your local chamber, right? And so it's not a this or that, it can be a yes and. And I think that, chambers of commerce provide, as a rule, if it's done well, right, and you're leveraging the opportunities properly and giving value first, networking properly, they're huge opportunities for most advisors and consultants, just by being active and engaged in their local chamber groups, like you've described, which is great. Thank you for kind of giving a profile of your business. I want to, if you don't mind, I'd love to dive into some of your expertise, because one of the most common things that I see, and I network with a lot of independent business to business consultants, because that's the world that those are my clients, those are my friends, those are my colleagues, the people that I network with. I'm sure you do too. I know you do, because we're part of the same group. In terms of the work that you do, helping leaders lead themselves first, build stronger teams, focusing on what matters most from the standpoint of looking at other, and I won't say solopreneurs because maybe they are one person shop and they still have to lead themselves in their business. But a lot of us have small teams or growing teams. I won't ask you for the silver bullet because I know there's no such thing, but what common challenges or what common advice might you encourage someone like you or I, who's leading our own consulting firm? We're trying to do more with less. We're trying to, like you said, maybe we're trying to level up, but we can't quite put our finger on what's holding us back. What types of questions should we be asking ourselves? What type of advice might you give us? How can we do a better job getting clarity on what we need to do to lead ourselves better and to enhance, the achievement capability of our firm?
Yeah. So I would say in a nutshell, and then I'm going to expound on that nutshell.
Sure, yeah.
I can open the nut.
Okay.
Is leading yourself. I mean, I think when we start a business, and especially if we're in some kind of a consulting nature business, we like people. And I also think people who are drawn to start their own business have ideas, they have visions, they are passionate about it, they're excited about it. And while that's great, it also needs to be harnessed in some way. There needs to be a foundation, right? So I'm going to glance over here at a tool that I developed, which is a self-leadership map. And, it's our mess is our message, right? So part of my mess is I am an excitable person. I love ideas. I love connecting with people. And so I needed something to keep myself on track.
Sure.
And I think that's the biggest thing, actually, the biggest difference between having my own business and working for organizations, which I did for so many years, is I don't have anyone to tell me that's not a good idea. Or you're going in too many different directions, or remember what our values are, So the tool I developed has 9 different areas. And the first area is all about intrinsic motivation. Like, how do you keep yourself motivated? And it's not rah. It starts with the foundational things. For example, I'll just touch on a couple of these, but being clear about your values. And I really like Brene Brown's approach and it's in her book, Dare to Lead, and it's narrowing it down to 2 values. Because I don't know about you, but I've done lots of values exercises and I get excited and I have a long list and I think, this is brilliant. And then I couldn't tell you what my values are.
Yeah, I've been there. Yep.
But I can tell you now, my values are connection and usefulness, and I use those. So I like to use it, again, a Brene term, but operationalizing my values. I use them to make hard decisions. I use them to design new programs. I use them to choose what events we'll go to. I mean, they just drive everything. Those mini workshops, I do those because I get to connect with people and I get to provide something useful to them. Knowing your why, knowing why, what's your purpose? What is it because we lose track of it when we start doing all those to-dos. I love doing this for myself, writing my self-love notes. Like, you don't have somebody in the office that's going to tell you you're awesome. So what you know what you need to hear? What do you need to hear? Jot it. There's lots of different ways to do that. And then this area of really choosing who you want to be, but filling your cup. So let's say, for example, I want to be, inspiring, and I want to be aware. I want to be authentic. Well, those don't just happen. If you had a crummy night's sleep, if you're not eating well, if you're not exercising, if you're not giving yourself what you need, and I think about that in these 4 different ways of intellectually, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever that looks like for you. When you feel on your game and when you feel blah. Well, if you feel blah, I don't care how you want to fake it, it's going to come across. Yeah. And everyone you meet will know that. And your business knows it. You're not as clear in your business when you're not as clear inside. And then the area of visions and goals, really being able to see what you want. I mean, that is the vision. What does it look like to get what you want? And then to set specific goals to go with that, and to have those in a container where You can easily access all of this when you need it. And even laying them out 30 days, 90 days, a year, 5 years, even 10 years. And when I first did those longer term goals, I thought, well, I don't know what the heck I want out that far. Who knows? But slowly I kept trying things on, it doesn't mean you have to stick, but knowing where you're going, have some kind of dream of where you're going. And then I think this is just an unsexy, super important thing is giving yourself that steadfast support that you need there day in and day out. So it's taking that consistent action, being tenacious, those little steps, the consistency. I was hearing the other day about exercise, like better to do 20 minutes a day than 2 hours on Saturday.
Yeah.
It's something for all these little steps. And then giving yourself support. I call it energizing support. Who is it that supports you? And who? We're talking people now. Individuals, groups, organizations. Now, what organization do you want to commit to that you really want to show up at? I don't know about you. It's like, I love joining different groups, but then it's just another email to get. And it actually starts bringing your energy instead of bringing you energy as being a part of it. Even getting clear about what your obstacles are. And ignoring them doesn't help, right? Yeah. Whether these obstacles are internal. And this is where I will tie now. I have much deeper knowledge. I have definitely deep knowledge about that inner saboteur voice or gremlin voice, the one that showed up on that trip out on the motorcycle that was saying all those mean things before we left, or even when we were out there that was bringing doubt into my mind. Now I have strategies for coping with that because it's not going to go away. We all have it. It's not going to go away. Could give a whole lecture on that, but we'll go on to the next thing. Yeah. And then of course, there's those external obstacles. Yeah. How does your technology need set up? How does your office need set up? What's your process for marketing? But laying those out. And then the second to the last thing is celebrating. Like, even though, and I think this is something I really miss, being in an organization where you're there together as a team and you're like, yes, we did it, you take a moment to celebrate before it's on to the next thing. We got to do that for ourselves too. Yep. And it's actually neuroscience. When we celebrate, it teaches our brain to do more of the same. And like little insight here too. When you expose your armpits, it actually sends a stronger message to your brain. So I do that. I don't always go like this, but I'll go like, yay me. Yeah. Yeah. It's okay. You know what you need. Then the very last area, this number 9 area, is really pulling it all together. And I think that's what we miss is, okay, we do the work. We have this all written down. Now, what does it look like in action? And that's kind of a whole separate topic also, but just trying to give an overview of this. Yeah. Because it's really helped me have this foundation. Some of these, I look at it, I have it always hanging on my wall. I update it once a month, but I don't have to update the whole thing. It's mainly just the vision and goals area, but I read through the rest of it and remind myself of those things. So yeah, if I'm not leading myself, I'm not showing up the way I want to show up with my clients.
And then that creates a direct, it's not an indirect, but it's a direct chain reaction or domino effect on everything we touch or are involved with in any shape, form, or fashion. Of course, the most direct domino we're going to knock over or affect is going to be the people that we're around. Yeah. Because we're people, we're humans, we engage with each other. And so, that's fantastic. That is, I've taken 2 pages of notes just in the last few minutes, just writing down things as fast as I can. This is incredibly helpful. And by looking at it in this way, thinking through this methodology, this is the overview, the outline of your self-leadership map, right? Yeah. Thinking about it in this way, it provides, I was going to say a checklist, but what I really mean is it provides a legitimate map on where we need to go, where, and it's a journey that we're always on, right? It's not, oh, you're here and you're going to get here. Yes, you might get more proficient in this area, and this area, but those things continue to be done. It's not that you get to check them off the list and take them away. It's that you get to check them off the list for now, and then you've got to continue to check them off the list. And so thinking about it in that way, honestly, as I'm kind of just talking out loud here as my brain is trying to process some of this, it's liberating. It's liberating in the way that my brain is thinking about it, the way I think I'm starting to internalize this, right or wrong. It's liberating in the sense that this what we're talking about, leading ourselves, it's not yes, we'll become more proficient in it, and we'll get better and better and better at it. But so often in the work that I do, and maybe this is my own psychosis a little bit, I feel like there has to be an end. I feel like I have to finish something, and I'm always working to put it, to get it done and put it away, and that creates stress and pressure. That honestly is largely probably unnecessary in the first place, especially when it comes to this. And so what I'm hearing you say is just keep these things in front of you. Just make this the horizon, and you're always striving to get to the horizon, and that will propel you further and move you in the direction that you want to go, help you achieve your goals, help you be a better team manager and team leader, help you achieve the business goals that you want to achieve, not to mention the personal goals you want to achieve, make you more fulfilled, make you happier. And so again, thinking of it and I guess it goes back to the cliche, which I think there's a lot of truth in. It really is the journey, not the destination. And this is the map to follow. This is an ever evolving journey that we're on. So anyway, that's
I have to add one more caveat to that is I'm listening to a book by Simon Sinek called The Infinite Game of Business.
Right. Okay.
It's shifting your mindset. Just exactly what you were talking about, shifting your mindset that, check off the list. This is done, to, wait, this is going to go on and on. I'm going to continue evolving.
That's okay. In fact, that's what gets us further faster, is realizing that, is not trying to put, the feather in the cap, so to speak, and dismiss it, but to understand that this is a progression.
Yeah. And it's probably why we all started our businesses, because we wanted that freedom, that growth, the challenge. And it's hard sometimes.
Yeah.
So anything we can do to support ourselves, it makes everything better.
Yeah. So this becomes the genesis. I think what you just walked us through at a high level, and even though you were walking this at a high level, you gave very, very tactical, practical advice. It's really, really content rich, really, really valuable. But this becomes the genesis for how you engage with someone, right? And then based on these 9 areas, you can kind of assess how well they're doing in any given area compared to their potential in the moment. And then, of course, all these things, like I mentioned, stay on the horizon, and we're always working to level up them all. But certainly, and as you were going through, I was starring certain ones that I know are things that I either don't do or that I don't do particularly well because I'm not focused on them enough, right? I'm not aware of them enough. I'm just not paying attention to them. And so we start there to try to build to make ourselves better leaders of ourselves. I mean, again, I'm using your words back to you, but I'm starting to actually understand and internalize really what that means now.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you just said you're just more aware and paying attention. And that really is the key. It's This has been fantastic. I love the trajectory and journey of our conversation. To continue the metaphor, it was incredibly valuable. I want to ask a question that I ask all of my guests. And honestly, I think I could take away the answer to this question for my own benefit, but I'd love to hear what you have to say. Top lessons learned from your personal, professional life and career. So, lay a couple of those on us. And then I want to make sure that everybody finds out how they can engage with you, contact you. Maybe they've got a client that needs the services that you provide. So, but first, lessons learned. Okay, great. Oh, I love this question. And 3 things came to mind right away. So first, be tenacious. I was told long ago, Jalene, you are tenacious. And I realized that is really a superpower of mine.
Yeah.
Second, make it about them and they'll make it about you. Sometimes I forget, get all wrapped up in the complexities of marketing or preparing, but just remembering to make it about them. And the third thing is, there are no rules. Like, we get to make up the rules. There are very few. I can't even think of one, especially in business, right? Except for we're not going to break the law. But otherwise, there are no rules. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my wisdom.
Those are incredible. Those are great. That's fantastic. So if someone wants to engage with you, they want to enter into the world of Jalene Case, maybe they've got a client to refer, they just want to maybe even work with you directly. What's the best way for them to access you, engage with you, contact you?
Best way is to go to my website. So jalenecase.com, JALENECASE.com. Good. And right on the homepage, there is a red button to schedule 15 minutes with me. Just schedule a 15-minute phone call, and we can just start out by connecting, talking. And then contact page is on there. So just say go to the webpage.
That is phenomenal. And thank you for being willing to do that. I would encourage everybody listening and watching to take advantage of that opportunity, just to talk to Jalene. As you can tell, she's just wonderful to talk to. And, one of the things I wrote down too, Jalene, which I think I'm going to try to put more into my life. You said you're all about, I don't know your exact words, but you were saying you're all about amazing conversations. And so I would just encourage everyone to click the red button because no doubt it'll be an amazing conversation with Jalene. Jalene, thank you so much for carving out the time to be here today. It was incredibly valuable. Like I said, I've got pages and pages of notes, and you are anything but a dime a dozen. So I really, really appreciate you sharing your expertise with me and with everyone here today. I'd love to have you back at some point in the future.
I'd love that. Thank you so much, Scott. It is an absolute pleasure.
Very good. Well, for Consulting with Authority, this is Scott Cantrell. As always, wishing you all the best of success. Thank you for listening. I hope you got a ton of value out of this episode. And before we go, I want to thank the sponsor of our show, Smart Solutions Media. Smart Solutions Media empowers business owners, consultants, and other independent professionals to easily attract better prospects and transform them into long-term clients. If you're a B2B consultant or service professional and would like to start filling your pipeline with better quality prospects, visit us on the web at smartsolutionsmedia.com to learn more about what we can do to help you. Be sure to complete the short 2-minute accelerated growth scorecard you can find on the website, and you'll receive a complimentary strategy session where we'll give you specific insights and recommendations to help you attract high-value clients. Until next time, make sure you are consulting with authority.